Alright everyone, it's the final episode, the last episode of Wistoria Wand Sword. It's a pretty good ending, not a perfect ending. I've got a few thoughts, I'll get to those shortly. But firstly, a recap. The episode starts off basically replaying the last 2 minutes of the previous episode, which I don't really like. Like, do a recap, you know, like in last week's episode kind of recap, that's fine, but just sticking in a whole chunk of the last episode in this episode feels like we're getting cheated out of more new content, if you know what I mean. But after about a couple of minutes we get to new content and we see what happens after Will defeats the evil Grand Duke. Well, defeating this thing has caused all the minions and demons and whatever in the area to come charging into their location. The students are kind of panicking because they've given everything they have to defeat this evil Grand Duke. They've got nothing left. So even though these minions are lowlier than the big boss, they are panicking. Worknor and Edward are flying in on their dragon. They can see what's happening, but they know they're not going to make it in time. Just before Julius is about to get struck by this demon, someone casts a very powerful spell, which just erases every demon on the board, basically. Every evil thing is defeated in one swoop. The spell we find out is called an annihilation spell, and the caster is none other than the king of the Magia Vanda himself, who I don't think we've even heard of before, but he's here. He looks like a Santa Claus wizard type of guy. His name is Aaron. He has some other names, some longer version of his name, but I think his name is Aaron. Will is sort of noticing this kid who's part of the party that Aaron has arrived with. It looks like they're on a campaign, or at least on their way back from a dungeon campaign, and Will notices this kid, who we find out is Finn. And I remember Finn from the flashback sequence of the last episode. The only reason I know it was Finn that last episode is because I watched with subtitles, and one of the people talking in the flashback, it said Finn, and the other person was Mercedes, I think. So I'm pretty sure this is Finn from that episode. After this we get a very quick scene with Hoodie and Headless, and they've got hold of this sword thing. We don't really know much about it. Hoodie is kind of saying that they're glad they just went and got the goods, which is the sword, rather than sort of try and fight everyone in the dungeon. That's all we really get from them in this episode. Oh, Headless says that they're going to have a big party now as well. The next part is actually narrated by Finn, which is strange because I don't think that's happened before. And it's kind of like a recap of the praxis exam, what's happened and the aftermath. We find out that no students actually died, but a handful of professors did. I want to say 8? It could be more, could be less, around that. And no one knows who's responsible for unleashing all the demons and all that. There's an investigation underway, but no one knows. So our main party with Will and the like have been rescued, and they're recovering now back at Regarden. They got a bunch of band-aids on their face to signify that they are injured. We get this really weird scene with Lihana and eating. I'll get to that later. And we also get a bunch of questions directed at Will with regards to the flaming sword trick that he pulled off. Will doesn't actually know what's happened there. He says he kind of blanked out. So it's a bit of a mystery, but that power has left him now and left his sword and everything. They also quickly talk about Finn as well, and I think it was Lihana mentions that he is probably from the Finn tribe, and this tribe is a group of people that don't do magic, kind of like Will, but they're very knowledgeable about the dungeons, also kind of like Will. And they've actually helped mages in the past explore the dungeons and get to the bottom depths. They're very important, apparently. The next scene actually involves Finn and the headmistress, Cauldron. Finn hands her a sword, kind of like a broken sword, and this sword is called the Mage Slayer, and they actually collected the sword from level 49 of the dungeon, so it keeps going deeper. But yeah, when looking for this sword, Finn says that they came across a very unsavory group, and this is why 20 mages were killed. This sword is apparently a mixture of various materials from the dungeon. There's something weird going on with it. Almost seems like a dark magic type of thing happening with the sword. We don't really know too much, but the name Mage Slayer is kind of ominous. Then Finn asks the headmistress why she has kept Will from him for all this time. Says something like, I'm supposed to be handling the swords.
That's what she said. No.
Do you handle the wands? And she explains that Will is kind of strange because he is a sword someone that can't use magic, but he wants to be a wand. He aspires to be a Wandn. Finn's kind of like, I've never heard of this before. From now on, you know, keep me in the loop. And I'm going to be poking my head in every now and then as well. After this, we see Will. He's got out of bed and he's training again with his sword. And then Sion gets the shits and jumps out of a window and confronts him and decides to have a fight. But it's like this playful fight. I mean, Sion's serious, but we get this playful music in the background, a bit of a montage kind of showing all the characters that have appeared so far in the show. It's very much wrapping up at this point. And I think it jumps about 2 months later, and the final scene is Will and all the students taking their final exams, their written exams, for the end of their 6th year, I think it is. And that's how the episode and the series wraps up. No special end credits, no post-credit scenes, apart from one little image showing that season 2 has been confirmed, which is great news. So a couple of the notable things in the episode. I mentioned that weird scene with Lihana and eating. Lihana says something and then her stomach rumbles. And then Colette comes over and starts feeding her some fruit. And she'll give her a bit of fruit and Lihana will say another, a bit of fruit, another. Bit of fruit, another. And it makes this really annoying eating sound in between as well, by the way. Then the group kind of starts making a big deal out of the fact that she's eating so much fruit as well, by the way. And she explains that she's a close combat mage and she has to eat more than the rest of them. And then Wignall, I think, is chiming in saying, oh yeah, I was very shocked when I first saw her eating like an absolute glutton. I think it might have been Sion says Miss Perfect's not so perfect. Oh, this kind of thing. I'm thinking, one, everyone has just gone through hell, almost literally. Of course they're going to have an appetite. They need to recover. 2, what she's saying about being close quarters combat mage kind of makes sense as well. 3, she's eating apple or melon or something. Anyway, I just found the whole scene, because it goes for quite a while. I found it to be odd and kind of out of place in the episode. It was almost like this mood lightning kind of thing, but I don't know, it didn't really work for me. Something that I noticed in this episode in particular is the transition scenes that I think I brought up briefly last episode, where they give like almost like a character information card. I noticed that in the subtitles, if you've got subtitles on, captions on, in this episode, it was showing some of the stuff on the cards in the subtitles. I hadn't noticed that before, but in this one it had Finn as one of the characters, and it said on the subtitles that Finn is forever 7 years old or something like that. So Finn might be like a bit of a Peter Pan character here. Does seem very knowledgeable and wise for someone that's supposedly a kid. And yes, we did get that confirmation at the end that there will be another season, which I'm glad, because it would be a shame to have watched this show as my first ever anime, get to the end just to find out that it's been cancelled. So it seems like maybe it's had a pretty good reception. I've noticed the overall score on Crunchyroll has dropped from 4.9 to 4.8 now. I think it was a 4.9 when I started. I think. Fact check me on that on the first episode. But yeah, as a season finale, I don't think it was great. And it actually left a lot of questions open, which is fine. But I kind of expected a couple of things to wrap up. It almost raised more questions in the last episode than it answered. And yeah, there were a few little weird moments in the episode that I wasn't that keen on. I actually preferred the previous 2 episodes a lot more. But that is the end of my episodic videos for Wistoria Wand Sword. I am going to do a full season recap. In that, I'll run through my sort of overall thoughts and feelings with the show itself and give some kind of review as well, maybe a score out of 10. And I'm also going to do another video, as this was my first ever anime show from start to beginning. Well, at least one season. I'll do a bit of a video as to where I'm at with anime so far. I am also watching Cowboy Bebop. I was doing that episodically, but now I'm just watching it and doing little scores in my Discord. But when I've watched a full season of that, or maybe the full show, I'll also do a recap video as well. But that's it for now on this one at least, and that's it for Wistoria Wand Sword for now. When these other videos are ready, they're going to be appearing around there somewhere. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.